And I really wish that I would have um, been better at that towards the end of my high school year, that I would have focused on my homeschool work, because I ended up being homeschooled because of my epilepsy. And I really wish I would have focused on that and got my high school diploma, but it really hurt a lot of things. And I couldn't live as a normal kid. I got bullied to death because of my because of my condition. And so yeah, definitely.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Nick Speaks, the podcast devoted to giving people in the disabled community a voice, where we speak up, speak loud, and speak out. I want to ask you guys a question. Is there somebody out there that was living perfectly normal and then all of a sudden you got hit with a disability and you had no idea it was coming, or you had no idea what to expect? Well, today I'm interviewing one of my best friends, and that happened to him in high school. All of a sudden, he got hit with epilepsy. He was living a completely normal life, had a seizure, and forever changed his life for the past several years. I am talking to my best friend, Daniel Rivera. Daniel, welcome to the show. Actually, Rivera, sorry. Daniel Rivera, welcome to the show.
Rivera, what's going on, man? Thanks for having me on.
Rivera, roll your R's.
Uh, thanks so much for having me on, Nick. I'm glad to be on here today.
Yeah, so Daniel and I grew up in school together. So, and we also went to church together too. We are two sanctified church boys, maybe not so sanctified all the time. You'll probably hear that on the podcast today. We are going to have a lot of fun because Daniel and I have been together for a long time, so buckle in your seatbelts. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll try not to give you a stroke if you're driving.
I didn't know we were in a relationship together. We've been
Yeah,
together for a long time. So,
yes, we have been.
uh, yeah, no, I'm
Okay.
I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, I'm excited that you're here too. And you guys, don't be jealous that Daniel has a uh better podcast mic than I do. We were just talking about that before I came on air. I'm using my webcam mic, and he's been after me. You need a boom mic. You need this. So, I will get a better mic soon, I promise. But right now I think we're doing okay.
Yeah.
So Dan, let's talk, because you grew up in the same atmosphere that I did. You were in high school when you had your first
Yeah.
seizure, is that correct?
Yeah, I was a freshman, I believe.
Yeah. So you were at a yearly event that our school, when we were growing up, had called school camp, and you had your first seizure. So if you can remember, talk about what you went through and what that was like.
Yeah, so when we were talking about it the other day, I was trying to think, like, was that my first one? Or I remember, so this was 2005. So we are already 10, 15, 18 years ago. Or no, 19, right?
No, it'll actually be
So,
15 this
oh yeah, no, sorry. My math is horrible. Wow, I don't know how I got to 19. That would be no, yeah, no, it would be, because 10 years past 2005 would be 10, and then 2015 to 2020 is 15, and then 19. Yeah, 19 years.
Okay, wait just a second, everybody. I forgot to do something during before I came on, but I don't want my phone to go off, and I'm not going to stop the recording. Hey Siri, turn on Do Not Disturb.
Okay, do not disturb is now on.
Okay, good. I did it for
Perfect.
my other device, but I forgot to do it for my main one. So, okay, so it was 10 years past 2005, or it's been what? Okay, say
Yeah,
that.
no, so it's been 19 years since this has happened.
Okay. All
So,
right. So if you can try to give the viewers and the listeners, because if you're viewing this, you're on YouTube, and if
yeah.
you're listening to this, you're in your car. Um, try to give the listeners of Nick Speaks, if you can, like, what was that day like leading up to your first seizure?
Yeah, sorry, and I go off on rabbit trail, so I'll try not to do that on your podcast. I've got my own podcast, and I can do that. So I think the very first time I had either a seizure or I passed out, I thought about the other day when we were talking, and I think it was actually at church, but it was so short. It was just a like a faint, and it might have been a week or two before school camp, before that happened, as we know, like the first major seizure, but I believe it was at church, and they had like called the ambulance and everything. But I walked away, and I had just passed out. So then fast forward 2 weeks to school camp. This was we were sitting in, so we went to a Christian school, and were you there that school camp or no?
No, I
Okay.
was never able to attend
Okay.
school camp. So let me ask you this question before you go into that. So when you passed out the first time, you said it was at church, and we're not Pentecostal, so it definitely wasn't the Holy Ghost. Okay.
Right.
I'm a Baptist now, but back
There you
then
go.
I was a complete independent, fundamental, King James only, no pants wearing for women Baptist. Uh, so when you passed out, your family just thought maybe you didn't eat enough or what? Did you end up going in the ambulance that day or not?
No, they just thought that it was like heat exhaustion, which I have had before since epilepsy. I've had many like fainting experiences too. So they thought, hey, he just didn't have enough water, or they just didn't think anything of it, like he just passed out. So it's like, okay, kids pass out, no big deal. Fast forward 1 or 2 weeks to school camp, and I'm sitting in the chapel service. And so I'm listening to the guy preach, and I think it was Stuart Mason before he came to First Baptist and everything. A lot of people aren't going to know who that is, but it was a guy that we knew. And
Yeah.
he was preaching, and all of a sudden, I just remember my head just kind of doing weird things, and I'm seeing spots, and then all of a sudden, I just black out. Well, let's rewind about an hour before that happened. School camp is crazy. At least at our Christian school camp, everybody knows that summer camp is crazy. Well, we do like fun songs before the preaching starts. We do like happy songs, everybody's clapping,
Yeah.
and school camp is crazy. A bunch of seniors were throwing guys up in the air. So I'm a skinny, probably 90-pound freshman, maybe 80, 85. I was
Yeah, you
so
were a
skinny.
stick.
They were throwing me up in the air. Well, they threw me up in the air. And as I came down that last time, I think it was the third or fourth time, someone didn't catch the back of my head, and it whiplashed off the concrete floor. There was just a
Ooh.
concrete floor in that area where we are having chapel. And I didn't think anything of it, just got a big goose egg. Nothing. Oh yeah, no. So this would have been the first time. This would have been the first time. So I think when I passed out in church, it was 2 weeks after. This is what happens to my memory. My memory, because of epilepsy, has gotten all wonky. So that would have had to happen 2 weeks after. So I apologize. You'll
No,
hear
you're
me.
good.
You'll hear me go back and forth, and that's kind of what epilepsy has done to my brain. It has me thinking that stuff is in different areas. Um, so anyway, so then my head whiplashed on the floor, and then that was the first night that I had the seizure. Excuse me. And then they called the ambulance, and I don't know what was happening. I just remember that I woke up in the ambulance, and then I was rushed to the hospital, and then my mom came to the hospital. I was still in a daze when I woke up in the ambulance, from what I can remember. Um, but when I got to the hospital, it was kind of like you had a seizure. I didn't really know what that was, and then it was just a journey from there.
Right. Right. And so the first seizure that I remember you having was in, we're gonna call her, well, we can use her full name, who cares? So the first seizure that I remember you having was in Emily Moffat's biology class. And poor girl, she she's a very emotional person. Like, I mean, if she sees a spider, she's gonna act like she's dying. Okay. So, and I get it. Don't get mad at me if you hate spiders and you're like that too, and you think I'm making fun of somebody who hates spiders. I get it. Okay. I'm just saying, okay, let's do this another way. If she saw a fingernail on the floor, she would probably flip. Okay. That's how Emily is. If she saw a fingernail on the floor, she would probably be like, "Oh my God." Um, so for Daniel to have a seizure in her biology class was like, "Oh my God, someone just died."
Yeah. I,
So go ahead.
no, I actually, so you reminded me of this when we talked the other day.
Yeah,
I don't 100% remember this one, and that's kind of what happened. So, if you're not familiar with what epilepsy is or what seizures do, they attack the brain, and
yeah,
it's abnormal brain waves. And so that has messed up with a lot of my memory. Luckily, it and for different people, it attacks their speech. It has a little bit of mine. Mine is more slurred now, and I can stutter and whatnot. But it hasn't fully taken it out. But it attacks the brain waves, and so I try to piece things together. But when you said that the other day, I was like, yeah, I kind of remember that, and I remember the nurse coming, uh, like waking up to the nurse and just kind of in her arms, I think. Um, and just
yeah. And
everybody
to give you
around me.
guys a visual, she was not like a hot nurse that you would see like on like you would see like on like a nurse a lifeguard at the beach like on
Grey's
an
Anatomy.
episode of like yeah Grey's Anatomy or like you know Pamela Anderson on Baywatch. The nurse at our school was we were not blessed with a hot nurse, unfortunately, and I think she woke you up with ammonia. But let let
Yes.
let's go back. Let's go back to when you had the seizure in biology class and crazy wonderful Emily, who I do love to death. So when you had it, you guys were all standing and she was going through the Bible reading and the memory verse for that day and all of the sudden you faint and everybody's just like, oh my gosh, and you start shaking like crazy, and it scared me because I was not too far from you. And she was like, just pray, guys, just pray. And so of course we went into speaking in tongues and no, I'm just kidding. uh we did not, because again we're Baptist, and we prayed, and then somebody went out and somebody was like, please go get the nurse. And this I will never understand is why somebody had to walk all the way over to the junior high and get the nurse, because then she was just left freaking out for 5 minutes, and so was everybody else.
We didn't go to a large school. We went to a larger Christian school, and so the high school and the junior high were together in one large building, but they were separated by like wings.
Yeah,
And there was a cafeteria that connected them in the middle, and a gym that connected them in the middle. And
yeah,
so
which
yeah,
is
like
probably
Nick's
why they got the nurse really quick, because they probably sprinted over there like, oh my
right.
God, somebody had a seizure.
So you had to walk all the way over to you had to walk through the gym from the high school through the gymnasium in the middle and then to the nurse's office, which was at the far end of the like the front street of the junior high. And then she had to walk all the way back through the back of the high school.
Yeah, it was a journey, and this happened at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Really?
It was
I did not know that.
biology was first hour,
Okay.
and
I don't
so
remember
we really started Emily's day.
that.
We
With a
really
bang.
started Emily's day off well. She probably hated us after that. Well, it was mostly you, your fault.
Yeah,
We
that's
were
fair.
freshmen. Anyway, so after you had that seizure at school, what started to happen? Because this was only your second seizure. So did your family start taking you to doctors.
Yeah.
And what was your first thought? Like,
I was all of the emotions. Number one, I was only 14 years old, so I did not know what to think. I didn't know, like I said, I didn't know what epilepsy was. I didn't know what seizures were. So I just knew that my body kept freaking out and it was very frustrating. I would wake up from seizures crying, um, because and when I say wake up from seizures crying, I would wake up, realize I had a seizure, and I would be crying because I hated what was happening to my body. And
yeah,
so
and you had no idea.
Right, and it put me in such a stressful situation. And I know you're going to ask about this, but I ended up enduring bullying and all of that stuff. So it became a almost daily occurrence, which eventually I had to get out of high school because I was having them daily, a couple times a day,
Right.
and it was just attacking my body because stress, not eating enough, all of that stuff in my specific, every seizure is different. It can be caused by lights. Mine are not that kind. So mine were stress induced, not eating enough, not getting a lot of water, different things. Fatigue is a big one for me, probably one of my main ones. And so I wasn't getting a lot of sleep because of that, and it was just happening daily.
Yeah, yeah, it was really traumatic for you. And so,
Oh, and by the way, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I
no,
did
go
want
ahead.
to, like, yes, they ended up taking me to doctors. We eventually down the line went to Cleveland Clinic, which was the best hospital for children with epilepsy or having seizures. And they did find out that it was caused by the head injury, and so that was the main cause, and it was something that they're like, we don't know if he's going to grow out of it or if this is something that he's going to have to be the rest of his life. So they did diagnose me with epilepsy, and from then on, I went on seizure medication.
So it was from the head injury from seniors who are bigger than you throwing you up in the air. Thanks, assholes.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh cuz I remember you saying that. I remember one of our other teachers, Matt, coming into a class after, yeah, Matt, we'll call him Matt H or Matt SH.
Oh, Matt.
Yeah, Matt.
Okay.
So I remember Matt coming into a class where one of the students had actually taken my wheelchair with me in it. They didn't think I was moving fast enough for them, so they decided to take it and run me into a bunch of students. And
Oh, wow.
so when I reported that, Matt came in and like gave the speech and was like, we have to be careful with Nick, kind of like with Daniel, and you can't like push his head around. Like, I like, how are you comparing me being rammed into a bunch of students because a stupid girl is
Uh,
not patient enough? How are you comparing me to slamming Daniel's head into like concrete? Like, that's just weird. But anyway,
compare you taking a wheelchair and using your wheelchair, the mechanical stick to run you into people, compared to like taking my head and slamming it into.
yeah. So that was interesting.
That's funny.
So how long? Okay, because on my last episode, which guys, if you haven't listened to it, I talk about you know, being used as a sermon illustration because of my disability. That's in episode 2. So if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to it. It's very important, especially if you're a pastor or a church leader. So how long after you started having seizures did like anybody use you as like a did anybody ever use you like as a sermon illustration to be like, Daniel's having seizures and that's his cross to bear?
I, I'm sure that happened. I can't say that it did. So I don't want. I'm sure I was mentioned in a sermon illustration before.
Like in the middle of it, you just go out and have a
Now that happened several times. And that happened. It happened all the way through college. It has happened, and we'll get into the fact, where people have said that I was faking and whatnot in school. But it ended up happening all the way, until marriage, and my wife would wake up in the middle of the night, where I was having a seizure. So, um, it's happened so many times. But as far as it being mentioned in a sermon, I can't say that it's ever happened. As a matter of fact, I'm sure it has. I don't think it ever happened to the extremity that it happened to you, as far as him saying, "That's your cross to bear." I think it might have been saying, this is something that he struggles with in life. If it ever happened, like I said, that's not something that I'm gonna remember for sure.
Yeah. Um, so were you involved in sports up until the seizures, or did you continue after that, or did you have to change?
I was actually more involved in sports after epilepsy. So every doctor told me that I should not, and I defied every single doctor. And um, I net like the P. I don't remember, and they could have been, there could have been a point where they said I need a doctor's note. I don't remember ever getting a doctor's note. Granted, we went to a Christian school, so it wasn't so like cut and dry like public schools are. Like they probably would have made you go through so many things to get cleared,
And they
you know.
probably would have, yeah.
But at a Christian school, they're like, "Oh, okay, you good? All right."
At,
Um,
at, at a Christian private school
Private
where
school, right?
everybody thinks they own the world there, the leadership. And if you don't do what they want you to do, you're not following God. We can get into that
Yeah.
in another episode. But so you continued in sports. Did
Yeah.
you ever feel like your life was taken away from you after you started having seizures?
Yeah, I felt like I felt like a lot of me was taken away because I couldn't live as a normal kid, as far as not having this burden to bear. Um and a lot of people would think that I was faking, like trying to get out of classes and whatnot. If anything, it hurt my education. I don't have a high school diploma, and I really wish that I would have um, been better at that towards the end of my high school year. That I would have focused on my homeschool work, because I ended up being homeschooled because of my epilepsy, and I really wish I would have focused on that and got my high school diploma. But it really hurt a lot of things, and I couldn't live as a normal kid. I got bullied to death because of my because of my condition, and so yeah, definitely.
Well, and I want to talk about the bullying, because this is something that I'm not proud of. But we all go through stages in life where we don't always act the best. And I'll say that I was a small part of that because I was just like, really? Because I thought every seizure you had to shake violently. Some of those, you kind of just fainted and laid there. Others, I remember one particular, we were in English class, or I was absent from English class, and I heard about one where you went through a period of seizures where you would just stop and stare, and then you ended up stabbing yourself with a pin, and you ended up cussing at somebody or whatever. I don't know if you remember that seizure, but I remember.
So
I
I
re
think so there was a period of time um where I would get, and I still get them. I actually haven't had a seizure for a couple years, but I still got like staring seizures. You know what I mean? As far as like staring into space. There's different kind of seizures. So if you're familiar with epilepsy or seizures in general, there are different kinds of seizures, and it's the way the mind reacts in epilepsy. So you could be sitting there and not doing anything and staring out into space, and it could be a seizure. You could faint and be out for a couple minutes, and people don't realize that it's passing out that could be a seizure. You could have what's called a grand mal seizure. The word grand, like this is grand, and mall, like a shopping mall, except just one L. So you could have a grand mal seizure, and that's kind of where your body could be thrashing. It could also just be moving, and it can be considered a grand mal. So I think those were probably staring seizures, Nick. I think honestly, if I was cussing at someone, that was probably me being mad, waking up out of a seizure and being mad at someone and expressing my real feelings. But
Yeah.
as far as stabbing myself, that could have been a reaction of a grand mal seizure. Um, but there were so many times of seizures that that I would wake up from and not realize what happened, and people would be like, "Hey, this happened." I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" And you just feel embarrassment, and I just
Right.
wanted to get out of that situation.
Right. And also too, I even started saying, Daniel, you're faking this. Like this is I remember saying that to you. And of course I've apologized to you for it now, but uh or back then when I did it and I realized that it wasn't the case, that you weren't faking it. People were just idiots. That's almost like somebody saying to me, I don't have seizures, but I have muscle tremors. So I have muscle spasms. So
Yeah,
that's almost somebody for the viewing audience who's able to watch. If I start going like this, and that's not fake, that's a now I made myself do that, but a lot of times like my legs will start shaking or my back will get really tense and I'll start moving like that, and that's what's known as a muscle spasm. And so that would almost be like somebody saying to me, Nick, your muscle spasms are fake.
right.
And of course I would be really offended and upset. And a lot of people did that to you. And it's interesting because you went back and said that a lot of your seizures were caused by stress. And if somebody was stressing you out right at that moment, it was nothing for you to go into a seizure because that's just what your brain triggered. And I see that now. Um,
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
you're looking at me kind of weird. Did I say something?
No, I'm looking down. If my eye moves to the side, it's I have a really bad stigmatism in this eye. So,
Oh, okay.
also I was also looking, there's a fly going around. So if there if you saw my eyes go that way, I was looking at this fly. It's annoying me, so I'm trying to like get it out of the way. Yeah, no, it was a very stressful time. One of the most stressful times in my life as a kid, and not even realizing what stress was until like the doctors and stuff explained it to you. But I always said this is a really bad thing to fake. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is something that hurts your life. It doesn't help your life. Usually you want to do something to uh better yourself. So you're gonna lie and say that, hey, I did this in life. Look at me. You're not gonna say, hey man, I I did this in life. It's such a bad thing. Isn't that cool? So I always said that if you look at epilepsy, epilepsy is a burden to bear. It's something that
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
possibly live with the rest of your life and not knowing that it'll ever be taken away from you. Only by the grace of God can it be taken away. Just like something like a cancer or anything like. And please don't get me wrong. I'm not comparing it to cancer. I'm just saying things like that are um that can stay with you forever. So obviously cancer is a sickness that can kill you. Epilepsy is something that can kill you, but also people live with daily. So I'm not comparing it by any means, but I'm just saying things that stick with you. Um but all that being said is I always said this is nothing that anybody wants to fake. This is nothing that anybody wants to feel getting up and not being able to walk for hours. at a
Yeah.
time because it shuts down your body, not being able to function right after a seizure because it shuts down your body, and it really in times had crippled my body. I would wake up and still, probably the last seizure I had was like I said a couple years ago, and still where my fingers, I couldn't stretch them enough when I would wake up from a seizure until my body finally uh recouped, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Did you ever feel like, because I'm sure kids did, like, who is this freak always having a seizure? Did you ever feel like a freak? Did you ever
Oh yeah.
feel out of place? Did you ever feel like, I'm some weirdo? How am I, you know, how did you process that?
Oh, absolutely. I think at that time I didn't process that was is the answer. No one saw at home when you're going at home, and I had a room that was upstairs and I kind of could just be by myself and in the corner, and there were just times that I would just cry, just like, God, why? Like, why do I have this? Why do I have to deal with this? Why can't I just be normal? Because
Yeah.
it is a burden that I had to bear, and still technically have to bear. I'm still diagnosed with it, and I still, if I had a head injury or something was really stressful, I could have a seizure still to this day. As far as they know, I'm still diagnosed with it. um
So because you drive now, how in the world are you cleared to drive?
so in most states, I believe it's 90 days without a seizure, you can be cleared to drive. The doctor has to clear you, because what they could do, the doctors can't tell you no, but what they could do is they could contact law enforcement and give them all the records, and law enforcement could say, okay, you're not allowed to be driving because we see signs of a seizure. So you have to get cleared through a doctor saying, okay, yeah, you're able to drive. It's been over 90 days and you're good to go. But real quick, Nick, I just wanted to say, you were talking about bullying and how I processed that. There was one situation, and I'm sure I don't think you were there for this situation, but I think you've heard about it for sure. And it's funny talking about it now because you can think the context of the situation. It's kind of funny. But so we're all sitting in PE, and was this maybe ninth or 10th grade, and we're sitting on the bleachers in the gym. Well, someone found a really, really stale pizza crust, and it was thick, and probably from a event in the gym where they sold pizza.
Right.
And someone was picking it up and throwing it across the way. Well, someone threw it and threw it really fast, and it hit me in the head. Well, it hit me so hard it knocked me out. So from then on, they called me. There's someone that wrote a comic about it, even in school, because they thought it was so funny that I got knocked out by a pizza crust. I know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, you think about it is kind of funny, but you think how hard a thick pizza crust could be if it just sits there stale, how
Yeah.
hard that can get. Very, very hard, almost like a rock. And so then from then on, people were calling me Little Seizures, you know. Do you remember that?
Uh, no, I don't
You
remember
don't
that.
remember that? Wow.
No, I don't remember that even happening.
That was one of the biggest
Oh my gosh. I'm
like
sorry for that. That's
I know
it.
it's funny, like we can laugh about it and I'm old enough to where I can think about it and think of how horrible that is on the bully side, and then on the other side how kind of funny that is at the same time. You know, you kind of have to,
It,
you know.
okay, we're mentioning names that nobody knows, but did Hobby Escobar come up with that?
I wasn't gonna say his name. You said it's your podcast.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
um,
Ah!
there was a couple of guys that, and they actually ended up making a song called Little Caesar Daniel. Um, and I know, uh, it it really hurt, from a bully standpoint, like as being bullied, and it was
Yeah,
something that I had to deal with. And what I ended up doing was I ended up trying to reflect or deflect
yeah,
everything. Like I ended up trying to join in the situation.
Yeah.
And oh, I'm sorry. Zoom does that when you raise your hand because I've got the computer that does that. Sorry about that. Um, I ended up trying to like join in on it. Like, yeah, that's funny. So anytime they would start singing it, I would sing it with them because what that would do is that would cause them to stop because they didn't see that I was affected by it, even though internally I was affected by it, but I was acting like I was trying to join them. And so it wouldn't continue on so that it would stop. And I had to do that a lot.
Wow. Well, two is that could also be, known as you just trying to cope with it
Oh,
because,
for sure.
you know, everybody else is making fun of you. Like if you like make a reaction about it every time, they're gonna start calling you, oh, you're a baby, you're too
Right.
sensitive, like
Right.
grow up, we just love you, and because that's happened to me, and I am someone who makes fun of my disability all the time. I call
Right.
myself a crippled. You know, hey, you want to come give me personal care? We can get into something fun afterwards.
Okay.
Just those type of things. But
Yeah.
I also learned through counseling that not always making a joke about something is healthy because you're really describing your inward pain. And I want to be clear that, yeah, make fun of your disability, you know, make the best of it that you can, but at the same time, if somebody is doing or saying something to you about your disability and it really hurts you, don't cover that up.
Yeah.
Say, hey, I understand you think it's funny, but it's not funny to me, and I would appreciate it if you wouldn't do that around me, because you can't control what somebody does when you're not there.
Right.
But you have every right to say, when you're in front of somebody and they're making fun of your disability and you don't think it's funny, you have every right to say, hey, you know, that's not right.
Right. That's not okay.
Don't mask it because if you mask it, eventually it's going to build up and you're just going to explode and you're going to be like, oh, I hate this person. These days people will take out a pew pew. you know I think I can say gun on podcast. People will take out a gun and start killing people these days. So because they've held it in for so long, they haven't said to somebody, hey, this really hurts.
Right.
They don't know how to deal with it otherwise, especially if you came from a home that's really extremely verbally abusive or sometimes physically abusive, and a lot of times people don't know that you're dealing with that on top of that because we all have a secret world that we deal with that nobody knows about besides God, you know.
Absolutely.
So yeah, make fun of your disability, but at the same time, if somebody's doing something that you don't enjoy and it's hurting you, it's bringing harm to your emotional psyche, um, speak up about it. I
Yeah.
say at the beginning and every end of this podcast, this is a podcast where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud. Be
Mm.
loud about it if it's something that's affecting you and you need it to change and you need the people around you to change.
Yeah,
And don't ever
absolutely.
be ashamed to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was the thing is I was hiding my true feelings while I go back and be like, well, yeah, that made them stop as far as it almost made them think that it was okay. So although they may only sing that song one time and bring it up every so often, I
I
know,
want to
right?
hear the song
No,
now.
it was to the tune of Little Peter Rabbit. Little Peter Rabbit, and it was Little Seizure Daniel. Um And so
Oh, wait,
because
I think I remember now.
I
Daniel can sing, guys. I'm gonna make him
oh
sing it.
gosh, no, I can't. And see, this was the what we're talking about with like joining in on the fun. Really internally, especially at that time, like that hurt. But
Yeah, of
what I
course.
should have done is like what you said, and especially nowadays in today's age, like it's not okay. Um, and what you need to do, like Nick said, speak out, speak loud. Like, go tell someone. I know it's frowned upon to be the tattletale, but
Yep,
when
yep.
you're being bullied and like you need to speak to someone about that. You need to first of all say, "Hey guys, this is not okay. This is bullying." And if they don't stop, go tell someone and say, "Hey, this is what happened and I don't feel good about this." I think with
Or
the
these
type of
days, you know what? Go to the kid's parents.
Yes, yes. I think
Yeah.
with the type of school that we were in, I didn't think it was going to be received well from the leadership, and I'm not dogging on the leadership. I'm just
No,
saying
it wasn't, but you're
I don't
not
think it was.
dogging on them, but what you're speaking is truth. Because the leadership would have been like, oh, come on, Daniel, man up. You
Right,
know,
right.
the leadership that we grew up under, even with me, um, one of my dad's favorite phrases when I was crying about something or upset about something was suck it up, Nick, and deal with it. That was one of my dad's favorite phrases to say to
Mm,
me. But it really caused a block because then I felt I couldn't talk to the authority in my life because then they were just going to make fun of it or tell me to get over it. And so the culture that we grew up in, Dan, it was not something that you could say, this is a real problem.
right.
We came from a culture, and maybe you and I can do a separate episode on that where we came from.
Yeah.
Um,
And maybe I need to have you on my podcast for that.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, and we'll plug your podcast here in a second because that's what it's all about. Podcasting helping
yeah, man.
fellow podcasters, and so we'll plug yours in a second. But the culture we grew up in, it was, never question authority, never tell authority how you feel. And unless you were in a clique, nothing was going to change.
Right.
Because if you weren't in that clique of people, nothing was going to change. Or, unless leadership had someone in their family that was immediately affected with a disability, you might as well forget it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it it's a road like, and I'm sure you've talked about this, Nick. Disability is a road that no one wants to be on.
This is true.
No
With
one
the
wants to.
exception of the free government check.
I never actually got that. I always now in your situation, it's a completely different situation because you have to have that to function.
Right.
With mine, I can work, I can functionally move my body. And I really that was the thing is everybody looked at me like, oh, he's fake. He's doing. I could have got all the disability. I had all the paperwork. I had all the doctors, validating that the situation was obviously real. They see the brain waves, all that stuff. I just chose not to go down the government like to get a handout. Maybe I
But
should.
wait a minute. Wait a minute. You were a minor. You were a minor though. So
Yeah,
even though
I could have
you
got
chose,
disability.
why didn't your parents choose? Like, why didn't your mom be like, "Hey, let's."
I believe that I was just like, I'm not going to do this. I want to go to because it's still I was working for a guy named John Blank at the time, who is no longer here with us. And I wanted to work. Everybody was working at that age. I was 15, and I was like, I want to go work, and it would have
Yeah.
only allowed me to work so many hours and only do so many things on my body, and I really wanted to power through the epilepsy. Hence the reason why I wrestled. Wrestling was the worst thing for my body, having
Yeah.
epilepsy, and I wrestled. And there were many times
So
that
how many more seizures did that cause you to have because of your wrestling?
So everybody always saw the seizures at school and at church, right? they never saw the ones that I had at home. Whether it would be in my sleep, and having a seizure in your sleep can be fatal. Um, it's not always, obviously I'm here, but it can be. And having that at home after wrestling practice, I did I did endure seizures at home and experience, there we go, I'm trying to think of the word. I did experience seizures at home, but I never told anyone. And a lot of times I would be up in my room and I would just be laying on my bed. I could feel them coming on sometimes. And so I'd be laying up on my bed and they would happen, and then I would wake up either on the floor or still in my bed and be like, okay, I think I'm okay, type thing. So I didn't want to tell anybody, because if I did, I wouldn't be able to do something that I loved anymore. So I love to
Yeah.
wrestle. I love to play basketball. I played basketball my junior year for another school, and I didn't
Oh
want.
no, Daniel, not another school.
I did it for the rival school, and
You,
I
you
remember
went
everybody.
against our system?
I
How
did.
dare you? Oh, okay.
I played for Calumet Baptist, or which is now Calumet Christian School in Griffith,
Right,
Indiana, and I played for them. And that was the year that I was out, because Calumet would take homeschoolers to play for their sports, and so as
right.
a homeschooler, I played for them, but I didn't, because I would have made the basketball team the junior year, but Fred Mooney, because of my seizures, the coach of the team at the time, said I wasn't allowed to.
Yeah.
So then I ended up going to another school and doing it. I wasn't gonna let anybody tell me no. So could I have killed myself? 100%. Was it dangerous? 100%. Should I have done it? Probably not. But I was just gonna defy every odd.
Well, see, that's the thing. And that's the thing I encourage people with disabilities to do all the time. Because if you look at me, my parents told me that I would never move out on my own. I would never get married. I would never be in a relationship. I would never be able to manage my own finances. And I have defied everything. And
Yep.
even now, I mean, I've been told by two states and three different counties that I'm not able to work because of my disability, which is why I'm on podcasting, which in the next couple weeks we're going to talk about um how it's been so hard for me to find a job as a person with a disability.
Mm.
But that's what I encourage everybody to do. Now, don't go out and be dangerous. If your doctor says, you can't play sports because this will kill you.
Right. And
Um,
that's what I did. So I don't encourage that. If you're gonna
don't
hurt your body, don't do that.
don't do that, but find ways. I guess this is where the inclusivity comes in. Find ways to make those who want to be involved in sports to where it's not going to hurt them if they
Right.
have a physical disability. Maybe wrestling is not something that you can do, especially if you have things with your head going on.
But maybe
Daniel,
tennis.
uh,
There's tennis. You know
there's
what I mean?
tennis, although that's a lot of work too, because you see people on the tennis court, they're going, ugh, ugh, ugh.
It's a
For
lot of work,
instance,
but
I hate,
it doesn't involve the head. Like a lot of sports, technically, I shouldn't play because they're all a possibility of hurting yourself. Soccer, you could get knocked down. Football, especially wrestling, basketball, even volleyball, like the ball can hit your head, or someone could slam into you. Hockey, almost every sport, but a sport like tennis, while it's a lot of activity, you have a lot less opportunity to get hit in the head with a tennis ball.
yeah, that's true too. Although it sounds like tennis players are in pain with all the noise they're
Yeah,
making. Like, oh my gosh.
it's strenuous. Yeah, it's a strenuous sport, but it's a good sport.
I have maybe like two more questions for you before we wrap this episode up. Um, was there a time where you like, and maybe I already asked this question because you and I are just having a conversation, we're friends,
Yeah.
so it's not kind of like structured or whatever. Um, was there a time where you like, God, I hate you. God, was there a time where you like, God, I'm mad at you? Like, I'm not, if this is what serving you is gonna do, bringing me a disability, then I'm not gonna do this. Christianity is not for me. Did you ever go through anything like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mentioned that there were times that it would take my legs out and I couldn't walk right or I couldn't move my arms right or something like that. And I just thought one of these days I'm gonna have a bad enough seizure and I'm gonna end up, uh in a wheelchair. I'm gonna end up on a bed the rest of my life. And so I would think I would be like, God, I hate that you gave this to me or that you allowed it to happen. And it was just something, especially as a kid, when you have so many people bullying you and you get all these emotions of just being a kid and having home life and all that stuff. So you're like, I'm
Right.
dealing with all this over here and I have to deal with this. Like, God, why can't you just take this away from me? And it was something I ended up learning that, and I know a lot of people say this was kind of cliche, but that this is something that I could take and I can give my testimony, as I get older and share it with someone that maybe have experienced the same thing that I experienced and say, hey, while it's tough right now, you're going to get through it and you can come out stronger and you might have to deal with this the rest of your life, but this is something that you can push through and don't worry about what everybody else is saying. You just focus on you focus on God, and God's going to get you through this. Don't think that God has brought this to you, but that this is part of a sin. And I know it's not a religious podcast, but we both believe in God that, this is part of a sin nature world that because of sin, sickness has come into the world. So it's not something that God has specifically gave you. It's something that
Yeah.
because of sin has been allowed. And so this is something that by happenstance, it not necessarily by happenstance, I wouldn't say that, but God has allowed this trial to happen in your life that now you need to use this to make you stronger and show someone that, to use your old slogan from your old YouTube days, you can smile through your trial and you can push through it.
Oh, yes. That was my old YouTube days. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, go back and see young fundamental independent Baptist Nick, where I couldn't curse. I couldn't say the word sex.
I'm actually in a couple videos too. If you go way back,
Yes, you are. We did
that's
how
funny.
not to talk to handicapped people.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, and it was one of well, my first one that I did was on my own about not to talk to handicapped
That's
people.
right.
And
That's
then
right.
you came and did a version where I actually had somebody with me. My hair was actually awful in that video, but okay. Um,
Anyway, sorry not to get off track.
yeah, but like, go back on my YouTube channel for those that are watching, go back on my YouTube channel and you can see pure Baptist Nick uh not cursing, not saying the word sex or hot girls or hot guys or anything like that. In fact, I think my mom may be a little upset with me because when she found out that I was doing this podcast, she said, keep it clean so that I can listen. And I've like said asshole a couple times. So she's probably already turned it off. So sorry, mom. I'm really sorry. I love you. And
Wish
I
they
know.
had. You remember the old TV Guardian? Wish they had like a TV Guardian that she could listen.
Yes.
It
But
would
that
just.
that TV Guardian was great because even though it bleeped it out, you still knew the word that they were saying.
Oh yeah, and it would. I don't know if you had the one that we had, but it would put the caption on the screen, and it would say like let's say it said the S word, and it would change it to like crap. But if it said the S or the F word, it would say something stupid um, like loving, because sometimes people can use the F word in like making love. Um,
Yeah.
but if you were saying someone is an effing son of a what, you know what I mean? It would say
Yeah.
a
Mhm.
loving son. So,
Yeah.
oh,
Oh,
it's
by the way,
hilarious.
I want to invite since I used some names in my podcast today, Hobby, if you want to come on and defend yourself, if you want to come on and sing the little seizure song,
Oh goodness. So Javi wasn't the one that created the song. To his defense, Javi and I are actually really good friends. Or we've lost contact. I think we're still friends on Facebook, but we ended up playing in the orchestra, the First Baptist Church Orchestra together as adults, as adults with kids. And so we were
yeah,
actually, there's no feel. Here's the thing: when you're kids, you're kids. So I understand that kids can say hurtful things, and I'm over it as an adult. And I said hurtful things too, so I can't just, uh,
yeah.
you know. I think he might even still have that comic. I would like to see that.
Yeah, I would like to see the comic too. And anybody else who sang the song, reach out to me at nickspeaksofficial@gmail.com because
Oh boy.
I would like to have you come on and sing the song for me and little Caesar Daniel here. So okay,
Go ahead.
so go ahead, finish what you were saying. I'm sorry.
I no, I was I've talked a lot, so I don't want to take
No,
over.
you're
But
perfect. That's the purpose of an interview.
I I want to say, there's I think that's the thing. You do have to learn. So many of us are stuck in, you know, experiencing your trauma, living through your trauma. And, I think therapists are great. I think that, that's something that's helped me going to counsel and whatnot. But I
Right.
think there's a way, I don't like necessarily the term get over it, but the concept of that is right as far as get through it, get past it, understand that that's part of you, but understand that forgiveness is a wonderful thing. And to not, I don't hold grudges at all. I'm so easygoing. And I know not everybody operates that way and thinks that way. But to get through something and that you can forgive someone and not look at them with spite and say, this person did this to me or this person treated me this way. I mean, it's just a freeing way to live and say, okay, man, it's whatever. It's in the past. It hurt me, and that's something I had to deal with. But now, because I have Jesus in my heart, because I have God, I can move forward and I can say, hey, you know, let's go forward.
Well, and we're both born again Christians, as we mentioned. One of the things that I talked about in last week's podcast was church leadership just going to me and saying, you have so much time on your hands. Spend time with God. Well, you see, and a lot of times the Bible and Christian advice is great, and I appreciate that. But when somebody is going through a hard time, even if they are a Christian, and you say to them, well, how long are you reading your Bible every day?
Oh yeah,
Or how long are you praying every day? Or ask God why he's putting you through this. Well, first of all, God's not putting us through anything. I believe that God allows things to happen
right.
so that it causes us to draw closer to him. But God did not give Daniel epilepsy. God allowed epilepsy to happen. God did not give me CMV, cerebral palsy. He allowed it to happen
Right.
so that I would in turn draw closer to him and bring people into his kingdom for his glory.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Um,
sometimes people just need a listening ear and a shoulder to cry on. We don't need a sermon. And that's what happens so much to disabled Christians. They automatically get, well, it says in First Peter, I don't want to hear what it says in First Peter right now. I want to hear that you understand, that you empathize.
absolutely,
It's
absolutely.
not necessarily about understanding, it's about empathizing. Because there's a lot of people out there that can say to me, they understand that I don't want to be locked up in the house all the time and that would be terrible. But until you go through it, you're never going to understand it. There's a difference between having empathy for somebody and understanding what they're going through. And by
Mm,
the way, having empathy for somebody is not, for the YouTube audience who's viewing, is not patting somebody on the head and going, "Oh, they're there. Oh, you're such a blessing."
yep.
That's not having empathy. That's just babying us, and we hate it. So let me ask you, actually, I said two more questions, but I have one more. So did you ever, and then we're gonna plug your podcast. Did you ever feel like people treated you with kid gloves because of your disability?
Yes and no. Like I said, I was pretty defiant and like saying, "Hey, no, I can do this. I'm fine." Like they would say, "Did your mom say this was okay?" I would say yes, and of course it wasn't okay. Or did the doctor say it was okay? Yes, of course it wasn't okay. At the same time, it was like, watch his head. You know what I mean? Because head injuries is a big thing.
Yeah, we didn't want
Um,
another lesson from teacher Matt.
right. So yeah, it was very like you got to be very careful with him. Um and again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about not being a normal kid, not able to, I would get to those things where I wanted to box when it came to PE. I wanted to put on a headgear and I wanted to box and like, no, you
Yeah.
can't box. If we hit you in the head, like you're gonna fall out.
Who
Um
was your PE teacher growing up? Because that always kind of made a difference. Was it?
There's a couple of people. From what I can remember, I can only remember two people. Adam Marhalski, I think, was the later one, but I think at the beginning it was Fred Mooney until
Oh
he
my goodness!
when he retired.
I'm surprised that Fred Mooney wasn't like, sure, you can do whatever you want.
Well, I don't think we ever did boxing with Fred, because I think they waited until your last 2 years. Adam, we did. Um, but I wasn't allowed to. I wasn't allowed to box. But I did want to go. I want to stay on this topic, but I also wanted to go back and say one thing I thought when you were talking about not wanting to necessarily, in Christianity, when people are like, just read the Bible and all this stuff, which is great. I think reading the Bible and I
Right.
think praying is great. I think it's a good way to cope. But I think you got to understand, like you were saying, Nick, is that we're human beings. Um, God allows it. And what we mean when we say God allows it is not that he's giving it to you, but the same way that he allows free will to happen. Could he intervene at any time? Absolutely, but he allows life to happen so that we can happen on our own. We can come to him on our own for salvation and all that stuff. But so sickness and all this stuff happens because of free will. And I think there's so many times like a husband and a wife are in a marriage and the wife will go, yeah, you hurt my feelings. And the husband will try to talk and say, well, what are they? And the wife just wants to be like, stop, like, listen to me. Just let me talk and let me get my frustrations out to you and tell you everything. And I think uh, therapy, Christian therapy, counseling, I think it's so important, especially in this day and age with mental health and whatnot. I think it's so important for you to have someone, have a person to talk to, have accountability for things, but also have a counselor that you go to or a therapist that you go to and talk about those
Outside
things
of your church.
outside of your church, outside of who you know. Make sure it's
Mm-hmm.
not someone you know. Make sure it's a therapist that you're going to and
Mm-hmm.
that deals with this and doesn't know you.
Yeah.
Um and can help you evaluate this in your life and can help you get through this.
Yeah.
I think it's very important. But yeah, going back to well what you asked, Nick. Like I said, I think it was more me defying things than people being. But yeah, I'm sure there were times where people were like, "Yeah, you need to treat him like he's a piece of glass because if we drop him, like he's gonna thrash."
Well, and what I meant by
There's a rhyme.
kid gloves, yeah. What I meant by kid gloves, Daniel, is did you ever have like your classmates come up to you and or like even teachers be like, little buddy, or you can't do that, bud, or talk to you in the high pitched voice, or that's what I kind of meant by kid gloves. I wanted to clarify.
Yeah. No. I get that. Yeah, because obviously in your situation, it was very much so. With you being confined to a wheelchair, I saw it so many times. People patting you on the head, Nick, how are you? Rubbing your back and like almost treating you like you're a baby. Yeah, I think there were times. I think that more happened when I would wake up from a seizure and like the nurse would put my head in her lap and like hold me like I was a baby because I was like I had just got out of a seizure. I think that's a little bit more understandable. Or like I would have like girls, if I fell out in a church, and some girls were nearby and they just saw me and they rushed to me because they had nurse instincts or whatever it was, and I wake up and they would be like, "Oh my goodness, are you okay?" Because I was a kid. And um, I don't think as going on through life, like, oh, make sure you don't touch him. I think it was more in different situations, like, hey, make sure he doesn't box, make sure you're watching his head, and in those situations. But I can't say there was ever a time that they were like, okay, hey, buddy, like, let's make sure you're not thrashing today. You know what I mean? Nothing. Or hey, baby boy, nothing like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay. So, one last thing about the epilepsy, and then we're going to plug your podcast because, and I'll be honest, I'm gonna plug this podcast, but I haven't really listened to it.
that's okay. You don't have to.
Um, what would you say to somebody out there who is just now struggling with epilepsy? And especially if it's a young kid like you were at 14, what would you say to them? What would be your words of advice to them?
I think this is a cliche saying, but you're going to get through it, and it may feel like the end of the world right now because it sure did for me. It felt like I was never gonna live, like I was never gonna live a normal life. I was never gonna have a family, because girls weren't gonna like me because of it. I feel like that could have also been a thing, with dating, that people didn't date me because of my epilepsy. Um, but I think if I were to talk to someone, I would say talk to someone. If I was
Yeah.
talking to someone right now and I was saying, hey, this is a way that you're going to get through it, go tell someone your feelings. I kept all of that inside. And I think that's why it's so important to get counselors and therapists, because you need a sounding board. You need someone to say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. So many people are treating me like this. And I feel like a burden on so many people. I felt like a burden on my parents. And I'm sure
Yeah.
at times they felt like I was a burden too. They're human beings.
Yeah.
Um, I felt like I was a burden on everybody. I felt like I was always interrupting, whether chapel services or church services or classes. I didn't want to be the interruption for those. I felt like I was always a burden. And you may feel like you're a burden, in those regards. You may feel like, for people on TikTok, especially, you're on TikTok, Nick, and there's people with Tourette's, and it's almost the same thing. For me, people don't believe those people with Tourette's. I just saw your smile. You're cracking a smile.
Oh my
In
gosh.
some,
Yeah.
in some sorts, it's funny. There's a girl that she says funny things when she has Tourette's, and so we laugh. And she's even said, it's okay to laugh because those things are funny things. But in the end, that people say that she's faking, it's a burden that she has to bear.
Yeah. You can't.
And
You
when
can't fake that.
I saw, I saw your face. Sorry, I can't help it. But I got on that. Uh,
This podcast just went to hell. Okay, so if you're a kid that's having epilepsy, talk
oh
to
goodness.
somebody and don't be afraid to. And for the viewing audience, they're going to be like, Nick, what the hell are you doing? I'm sorry. I'm sitting in a room with a fan not on and I'm sweating like crazy. So, and now my mom is definitely not going to listen because I cussed a whole lot today.
Yeah, man. Uh, That's okay. But no, to bring it to serious, but I use that as a example because there's things like that or epilepsy or whatever it is, that you may be
Yeah,
dealing in your life that uh people are gonna look and be like, man, they're just a burden, and just know that you're not a burden.
you're not.
God God allowed you to have this. He didn't give this to you, but he allowed this to happen for a purpose so that you could take this and help someone in your life. And now you have this, and think of it as just a different way of living. It's not the what we would think as of normal, but it's your normal. And you can take it
Yeah,
and you can use it and you have a purpose for your life. There are many times, Nick, that I wanted to take my life. That
yeah,
I didn't want to live anymore because of the bullying in high school, man. There's so many times where I was like, man, it's better if I just commit suicide because I'm
yep,
tired of having this. It's not worth it. Your life is worth it. Your
yeah.
life has a purpose, and so take it and do something with it and realize that you are special. God made you special, and there's a purpose for your life.
And hold on just a second, because I just have to say that you said so many things, and one of the things you said was you're special. Now, hold on just a minute, because somehow everybody with a disability is special. Okay, that I almost hate that term,
Yeah,
but
I
it
get it.
doesn't mean because you have a disability, you're a different kind of special. Every
I know what you mean.
every sorry, oh my God. Everyone is special in their own way, but because people used to come up to me all the time, Daniel, and they'd be like, "You're so special to God," and I'm like,
Yeah, no, I hate that because I, here's what I meant by that is this. Oh goodness, we're gonna go off the rails again. What what
"Oh,
I
it's
meant
it's
by
okay,
that
it's a
is
podcast."
for you, you are special because you are different.
Yeah.
And God has allowed this to happen to you, and there is a purpose for your life, and you can still do something with your life. Um, I don't mean it for the fact to be like, oh yeah, you're a special kind. You know what I mean? No, there is a purpose for your life, and you can do something with your life.
Yeah.
Nick, I just think of that song when we were at Java. God made you special. You're the only.
Oh my gosh. Who used to sing that? Was
I can't
that
remember
Marge?
her name. Wait, what?
I thought it was Marge Jones.
Yeah, Marshall, Miss Jones. Yep,
Yeah. Oh, we're dropping a lot of names today. Sorry, guys.
Marge Jones.
Um,
Hollis
yeah,
Chapel.
she used to sing that, and she used to sing Hallelujah Square, which she's
Oh
a
yeah, yeah,
sweetheart.
yeah. She
I'm
is
not making
super
fun of
sweet lady.
her. I
No,
think
me neither.
I I think she went on to be with the Lord, but
Yeah,
um
super sweet lady.
she's a super sweetheart.
But that song
But
is true. When you think about it, God made you special. You're the only one of a kind. And if you are an abled person, um, you
God made
know,
you special.
God
That's what
made you.
we're trying to
Yeah,
say
just
in
think.
this long
Oh,
rabbit trail that I've
I
created.
I wanted to say this. There's a guy named I forgot his last name. Anyway, him and his wife have a YouTube channel, Shane and Hannah, Squirmy and Grubs, and one thing he always says is, you don't have to treat me like I'm different. Just treat me normal.
Yeah. Hmm.
Treat me like a normal person. And that's the best way that you can treat someone in these situations. Treat them just like you would talk to someone walking down the street. And I think that's why Nick and I communicated so well because like we would pick on each other like normal people would, like normal friends. And we both had different disabilities and we would talk to each other like normal
Now,
people.
this does not mean treat me normal to a disability person, does not mean, okay, you want me to treat you normal? I'm going to treat you like an asshole.
Yeah.
I just want to be there. There I go again. she's not going to listen.
Okay, but
But
you're not gonna
my
treat
mom.
the
But
average you're not gonna treat the everyday person like an asshole. You know what I mean?
unless you do, then you really are.
Right. Then that's a different story. But
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so this podcast has gone. I think we started in. How long ago did we start?
we've gone like at least an hour and 12 or 13 minutes. So
Okay, so this is my longest podcast. So, but one more thing we got to do is plug your podcast. So tell me and tell those that are listening your podcast and what the mission is.
yeah, absolutely. And Nick mentioned that he hasn't listened to a lot of my podcasts, and that's okay because this podcast isn't for every single person. I think it's more for people that are interested in like Bible doctrines or in the in depth of the Bible. But I'm a Christian, like as we mentioned, and so I've got a podcast with two other guys, Jonathan Maskey and Moses Leva. Our podcast is called Back to the Fundamentals, and we're on all podcast sites. We're also on YouTube. And our purpose is the way Nick and I grew up. We were taught a lot of legalism, which legalism in Christianity is something that you need extra to be saved. Like you need to dress right, or you can't listen to this type of music, or you can't go to the movies and all that stuff. And those are things that we were taught. And I think Nick's covered a little bit of that and some of his TikToks. But uh, and honestly, if you go back in Nick's older YouTube videos, he covers that a little bit more. But our purpose is just getting back to scripture and focusing on what the Bible actually says. And so it is a Christian podcast. So if you are interested in that, Back to the Fundamentals podcast.
Yeah, send me like a link. I'll put it on like the podcast website
Yeah, absolutely. I
or
appreciate it.
in the YouTube. I'll have my podcast coach put in the YouTube description too. Um, so yeah, I hope this podcast made y'all laugh, made y'all have fun today. Maybe you're on your way to work, or maybe you're on your way home from work listening to this. And so I hope we gave you um, good laughter. If you heard my staff in the background on the phone, I apologize. If you heard me rubbing my eye in the middle of the podcast, I apologize. But we kind of just do this random here at Nick Speaks. Well, not random. This is actually scheduled. But I want to thank you for joining me today. I want to thank Daniel, my guest, joining me for today. You will be back because this was fun
Yeah,
and
man.
get into all the legal lists and all the bullcrap stuff that we were in because I that'd just be fun to talk about. I mean,
Yeah.
it's my podcast, so I talk about what I want.
And thank you so much for having me, Nick. And I want to send this invite to you. I want to have you as a guest on our podcast soon.
Absolutely. And then we can really drop names.
Yeah, honestly, like we're not afraid. So
Yeah, absolutely. And so, too, I just want to put this out there, guys. One of the reasons why I do this podcast is because I'm also a public speaker. So if you're out there and you would like a disability advocate to come to your church or to come to your school or to do your online event, reach out to me at nickspeaksofficial@gmail.com and we will set that up and talk about pricing and all that type of stuff. And please check out my good friend Daniel Rivera. Roll your R's for me one more time.
Rivera.
Yes, nice and sexy. Um, so please check out Daniel's podcast, Back to the Fundamentals. I'm sure it's great. I'll never know because I'll probably never listen to it unless I listen to my episode that I'm on. So, anyway, guys, thank you for joining us on Nick Speaks, where we speak out, speak up, and speak loud and give a voice to those who feel they don't have one in the disabled community. Please join us next time. We'll see ya.